Kevin Martinez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished stitching up a Centauri hound's leg. The large blue creature wagged its 3 tails happily, and Kevin couldn't help but smile. Working as a veterinarian on Haven Ridge Colony had brought him face to face with dozens of alien species he had only read about in textbooks back on Earth. Each day brought new challenges, new creatures, and new lessons about the incredible diversity of life in the galaxy. The clinic's communication panel beeped loudly, interrupting his thoughts. Kevin's assistant, Lisa Chang, answered it quickly. Her expression changed from curious to concerned in seconds. "Dr. Martinez, we have an emergency. Someone found an injured creature near the spaceport dumpsters. They say it's dying." Kevin grabbed his emergency medical kit without hesitation. "Tell them I'm on my way. What species are we dealing with?" Lisa's face showed confusion. "They're not sure. It's small, has wings and scales. That's all they could tell me. The spaceport was only 10 minutes away by transport vehicle." Kevin arrived to find a small crowd gathered around a rusted dumpster. A Vorian cargo handler, his 6 arms crossed nervously, pointed toward a pile of discarded shipping containers.
"In there, human doctor!"
I heard crying sounds when I was taking out trash. Very small, very weak. Kevin knelt down and carefully moved aside a torn plastic sheet. His breath caught in his throat. Curled in a tiny ball barely larger than a house cat lay a dragon. Its scales were dull bronze, covered in dirt and dried blood. 2 small wings hung at awkward angles, clearly broken. The creature's breathing was shallow and rapid. "It's a dwarf dragon," someone in the crowd whispered. "Just leave it." "They're defects anyway." Kevin felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. He had work to do. Gently, he reached toward the small dragon, speaking softly. "Hey there, little one. I'm here to help. I'm a doctor." The dragon's eyes opened slowly. They were golden, filled with pain and something that looked like hopelessness. The creature tried to move away, but was too weak. Kevin noticed a mark burned into the scales on the dragon's shoulder. It was a Kreth Empire slavery brand. "Lisa, prepare the intensive care unit, now." Kevin spoke into his communicator while carefully lifting the dragon. The creature weighed almost nothing, far too light for its size. Starvation, Kevin realized. This dragon had been without food for a very long time. The Vorian cargo handler stepped forward.
"Human doctor, why waste resources? Dwarf dragons are worthless."
Their own kind abandons them. They cannot fly properly, cannot breathe fire like real dragons. "The galaxy has decided they are not worth saving." Kevin looked at the alien directly. "I'm human. We don't abandon those who need help."
Every life has value. Back at the clinic, Kevin worked with focused intensity.
Lisa had prepared the intensive care unit, adjusting the temperature controls to match dragon physiology. Kevin carefully examined his patient. The dragon was female, probably young, though he couldn't be certain. Her wings had been broken deliberately, he realized with disgust. Someone had snapped them to prevent escape. Multiple fractures, severe malnutrition, infected wounds, and dehydration, Kevin listed as he worked. "Lisa, I need nutritional supplements compatible with dragon biology. Start with the mineral-rich formula we use for the scalebacks, but cut it to 1/4 strength. Her system is too weak for full nutrition yet." Throughout the night, Kevin cleaned wounds, set broken bones, and administered medications. The dragon drifted in and out of consciousness. Each time her golden eyes opened, they found Kevin's face. He kept talking to her, explaining what he was doing, promising she was safe now. "You're going to make it," he said softly while wrapping her wings in protective splints. "I know you've been through terrible things, but that's over now. Nobody's going to hurt you here." By dawn, the dragon's breathing had stabilized. Kevin had moved a comfortable chair next to the intensive care unit and refused to leave. Lisa brought him coffee and breakfast. You should rest, Dr. Martinez. I can monitor her for a while. Kevin shook his head. She needs to know someone is here. When she wakes up again, I want her to see a friendly face, not an empty room. Around mid-morning, the dragon's eyes opened and stayed open. She looked around the clean, warm medical unit, then at Kevin. He saw intelligence in those golden eyes, real understanding. She tried to speak, but only a weak clicking sound came out. Kevin reached for a small translation device. Here, let me help. This will translate your language. He placed the device near the dragon. After a moment, a soft female voice emerged from the speaker. Why? Help me?
I am nothing. Defective.
Worthless. Kevin felt his heart break at those words.
You're not worthless. You're a living being who deserves care and kindness.
What's your name? The dragon was quiet for a long moment. I was never given one. My clutch abandoned me at hatching. Too small, they said. Wrong size. Then the traders found me. They called me merchandise. That's not a name, Kevin said firmly. You need a real name. How about Ember? Your scales remind me of glowing coals from a fire. The dragon, Ember, stared at him. A single tear rolled down her scaled face. Why are humans different? Why do you care? Kevin smiled gently. Because caring is what makes us human. And right now my job is to help you get better. Are you hungry? I have food prepared for you. As Kevin carefully fed Ember small amounts of specially prepared nutrition, he made a silent promise. Whatever it took, he would help this small dragon recover. The galaxy might have decided she was worthless, but Kevin knew better. In his experience, the smallest patients often had the biggest hearts. 3 weeks had passed since Kevin found Ember in the dumpster. The small dragon's physical recovery was remarkable, but her emotional wounds ran much deeper. She rarely spoke, even with the translation device nearby. When she did communicate, her words were brief and filled with self-doubt. Kevin arrived at the clinic each morning before sunrise, always checking on Ember first. This particular morning he found her awake, staring out the window at the Haven Ridge skyline. The early light made her bronze scales shimmer slightly. Good morning, Ember. How are you feeling today? The dragon turned her head slowly. My wings hurt less. The medicine you gave me helps. Kevin smiled and performed his routine examination. The broken wings were healing well, though he worried they might never be strong enough for flight. Dwarf dragons were already challenged in that area, and these injuries had been severe. He kept those concerns to himself for now. I brought you something special today, Kevin said, pulling out a small tablet computer. I've been researching dwarf dragon biology. There isn't much information available, which seems strange for a sentient species. Ember's golden eyes showed interest for the first time in days. What did you find? Well, most galactic medical databases barely mention your species. The few entries that exist call dwarf dragons a genetic mistake, a failed branch of dragon evolution. But I don't believe that. Lisa entered the room, carrying a tray of food. She had been helping Kevin research constantly, spending her free time digging through obscure scientific papers and ancient records. Dr. Martinez, I found something interesting last night, Lisa said excitedly. There's an old Earth study about selective information suppression in galactic databases. Apparently, certain species have their achievements and capabilities deliberately hidden or minimized. Kevin raised his eyebrows. Why would anyone do that? Control, Ember said quietly. Both humans turned to look at her. The small dragon continued, her voice stronger than before. If the galaxy believes we are defective and worthless, no one questions what happens to us. We can be sold, traded, abandoned.
No one cares about the suffering of something they consider broken. The weight of her words hung in the air.
Kevin felt anger building inside him again, but he channeled it into determination.
Then we'll prove them wrong.
Ember, I want to run some tests. Nothing painful, I promise. I just want to understand your biology better. Over the following days, Kevin discovered something extraordinary. Dwarf dragons possessed regenerative abilities that surpassed most known species. When properly nourished, their bodies could heal damage that would be permanent in other creatures. Their small size wasn't a defect, but an adaptation that required less energy and resources. Their brain structure showed exceptional intelligence and problem-solving abilities. "This is incredible," Kevin told Ember one afternoon while reviewing test results. "Your species isn't defective at all. You're highly evolved and efficient. Someone has been hiding this information deliberately." Ember moved closer to the screen, her interest clearly growing. "What does this mean?"
It means you're special, Ember.
Very special. As the weeks turned into a month, Ember's personality began to emerge from behind the walls of trauma. She was curious, asking questions about everything in the clinic. She watched Kevin work with other patients, observing his techniques carefully. One day, while Kevin was struggling with a complicated procedure on a sick Talarian bird, Ember spoke up. "The inflammation is blocking the medicine flow. You need to reduce swelling first before administering treatment." Kevin paused and looked at her. "How did you know that?" "I have been watching you work. I see patterns in how bodies respond to treatment." Kevin followed her advice. The procedure succeeded. From that moment, he began explaining his work to Ember in detail, and she absorbed the information like a sponge, soaking up water. Word began spreading through Haven Ridge about the human veterinarian who had saved a dwarf dragon. Other aliens started bringing their sick animals to Kevin's clinic, creatures that other doctors had refused to treat. As a Fawn family brought their elderly pet, considered too old to be worth medical care, Kevin and Ember worked together to ease its pain and extend its life. A Vorian brought an injured native creature that was seen as a pest species. Kevin treated it with the same care he gave every patient. The clinic became known as a place where all life was valued equally. Kevin noticed that Ember grew more confident with each patient they helped together. She began offering suggestions during treatments, and her insights were often correct. One evening, after a particularly long day, Kevin sat in his office reviewing files. Ember had started perching on a special stand he had built for her near his desk. She was looking at medical diagrams on the tablet he had given her. "Kevin," she said, using his first name for the first time. "Why do humans treat all species with equal respect? The galaxy has hierarchies. Some species are considered superior, others inferior, but humans seem to ignore these rules." Kevin leaned back in his chair, thinking about his answer carefully. Humans learned a hard lesson in our own history. For a long time, we treated each other badly based on superficial differences: skin color, birthplace, beliefs. It caused terrible suffering. When we finally learned to see past those differences and recognize the value in every human life, we grew stronger as a species. When we met alien life, we decided to apply that same lesson. Every sentient being deserves dignity and respect. Ember was quiet for a moment. "The traders who owned me said humans were soft and foolish. That your compassion was a weakness that would destroy you. Compassion isn't weakness," Kevin replied firmly. "It's strength. It takes courage to care when others don't. It takes bravery to stand up for those who can't defend themselves." The small dragon's eyes glowed brighter. "You stood up for me. You saved my life when the galaxy said I wasn't worth saving." "And I'd do it again," Kevin said with a smile. "You're part of this clinic now, Ember." "Your family?" 6 months had transformed Ember from a dying creature into a vibrant, confident being. Her wings had healed remarkably well, though she still couldn't fly for long distances. She had gained healthy weight, and her bronze scales now shone brilliantly under the clinic lights. More importantly, she had become Kevin's partner in running the medical facility. Each morning, Ember greeted patients alongside Kevin. Her small size and gentle manner made nervous animals feel safe. Her sharp mind caught details that even Kevin sometimes missed. Together, they had treated over 300 patients, many of whom were considered unwanted or too difficult by other veterinarians. The clinic had expanded twice to handle the increased number of patients. Lisa had hired 2 more assistants, both aliens who believed in Kevin's mission of treating all creatures equally. The waiting room was always full, filled with beings from dozens of different worlds. On a Tuesday morning, everything changed. Kevin was examining a Quellan reptile when Lisa rushed into the treatment room, her face pale with worry. "Dr. Martinez, we have a problem." "A big problem." Kevin looked up from his patient.
"What's wrong? There's a Kreth trader in the waiting room. He's demanding to see you immediately."
"He says he owns Ember and wants her back." The medical instrument slipped from Kevin's hand and clattered on the floor. Ember, who had been organizing supplies nearby, froze completely. Her golden eyes went wide with fear. "No," she whispered. "Not Voss." "Please, not him." Kevin moved quickly to Ember's side. "Nobody is taking you anywhere." "You're safe here, I promise." Lisa led them to Kevin's office while another staff member dealt with the waiting room. Through the window, Kevin could see a tall Kreth standing near the reception desk. The alien's gray skin and multiple facial ridges marked him as a merchant-class trader. He wore expensive clothing and carried himself with arrogant confidence. "Stay here, Ember. Lock the door." "Don't come out until I say so." Kevin's voice was calm but firm. Kevin walked into the waiting room, and the Kreth turned to face him. The alien's eyes were cold and calculating. "You must be the human veterinarian. I am Voss, registered merchant of the Kreth Empire. I have come to collect my property." "I don't have any property belonging to you," Kevin replied evenly. Voss pulled out a datapad and displayed an official-looking document. 6 months ago, a dwarf dragon registered to my ownership escaped from my ship. Station records show you retrieved this creature from the spaceport. Galactic commerce law requires you to return stolen property. Kevin felt his jaw tighten. That dragon has a name. Her name is Ember. And she's not property. She's a sentient being. The Kreth laughed, a harsh sound that made other patients in the waiting room shift uncomfortably. Human law may say such foolish things, but galactic law is clear. Dwarf dragons are classified as diminished persons. They can be legally owned and traded. I have the documentation proving my ownership. Return my merchandise, or I will take legal action. Then take legal action, Kevin said firmly. Because I'm not handing over a living, thinking person to anyone. Voss's expression darkened. You make a mistake, human. I have powerful connections in the Galactic Commerce Authority. I will have that creature back, and I will have compensation for my losses. You have cost me 6 months of potential profit. After Voss left, Kevin immediately contacted Jacob Warren, the Haven Ridge Colony Administrator. Jacob was a practical man in his 50s who had always supported Kevin's work. He arrived at the clinic within an hour. This is complicated, Kevin, Jacob said after reviewing Voss's legal documents. Technically, under galactic law, he has a case. Dwarf dragons have been classified as diminished persons for over 2 centuries. That classification allows them to be bought and sold. That classification is wrong, Kevin argued. Ember is fully intelligent. She understands medicine. She communicates complex ideas. She has emotions and dreams. How can any law call her diminished? Jacob sighed heavily. I agree with you personally, but Earth is still new to the galactic community. We have to be careful about which laws we challenge. This could cause diplomatic problems.
Ember emerged from the office, having heard everything. She looked at Jacob with her golden eyes.
Administrator Warren, I do not want to cause trouble for Haven Ridge. If my presence here creates problems, I will surrender myself.
Absolutely not, Kevin said immediately. We're not giving up.
There has to be a way to fight this, Jacob thought for a long moment. There is one option. We can request a hearing before the Galactic Council's regional court. They handle disputes between different legal systems. Earth's anti-slavery laws directly conflict with the commerce regulations Voss is citing. The court would have to decide which law takes precedence in this colony. How long would that take? Kevin asked. Could be weeks or months. During that time, Voss cannot legally take Ember. But Kevin, you need to understand something. If we lose this case, it sets a precedent. It could affect not just Ember, but any other dwarf dragon who seeks refuge on human worlds. Kevin looked at Ember. The small dragon stood tall, her fear replaced by determination.
Then we won't lose, Kevin said. We'll show the court exactly what dwarf dragons are capable of.
We'll prove that the diminished person classification is based on lies and prejudice. Over the next few days, Kevin prepared for the legal battle ahead. He gathered all his research on dwarf dragon biology. He documented Ember's medical knowledge and her contributions to the clinic. He contacted other veterinarians and researchers who might testify. Word of the case spread quickly through Haven Ridge. Many residents, both human and alien, expressed support for Kevin and Ember. Some alien species saw parallels to their own struggles for recognition and rights. Others worried about upsetting the established galactic order. One evening, as Kevin worked late preparing documents, Ember sat beside him. Kevin, are you certain you want to do this? Voss is powerful. This fight could hurt your career, your clinic, everything you've built. Kevin looked at his small friend and partner, Ember. Some things are worth fighting for. Your freedom is one of them. Besides, you're not just fighting for yourself anymore. There are thousands of dwarf dragons out there, living in slavery, or worse. If we can change how the galaxy sees your species, we change everything. The regional courthouse on Haven Ridge was filled beyond capacity. News of the case had spread across multiple star systems, drawing attention from species throughout the galaxy. The courtroom itself was a massive chamber designed to accommodate dozens of different life forms. Environmental suits and translation devices created a low hum of background noise as beings from countless worlds waited for the proceedings to begin. Kevin sat at the defendant's table, wearing his best formal clothes. Beside him, on a specially designed perch, sat Ember, her bronze scales polished and gleaming. She wore a small medical badge that Kevin had made for her, identifying her as a certified clinic partner. Despite her confident appearance, Kevin could see her wings trembling slightly. "We can do this," Kevin whispered to her. "Just tell the truth. Let them see who you really are." Across the aisle, Voss sat with 3 expensive lawyers, all craft merchants who specialized in commerce law. They looked smugly confident, occasionally glancing at Ember as if she were simply a product being disputed in a business transaction. The judge was a Valorian, a species known for fairness and logical thinking. Her name was Magistrate Keller, and her 4 eyes surveyed the courtroom with careful attention. She activated the translation system, and her voice echoed through the chamber in dozens of languages simultaneously. "This court will now hear the case of Voss against Kevin Martinez regarding ownership and sentient rights. The prosecution may begin." The lead Kref lawyer stood, his movements precise and practiced. "Honorable Magistrate, this case is simple. My client legally purchased a dwarf dragon according to established galactic commerce regulations. The creature escaped, and this human refuses to return property that does not belong to him. We have documentation proving ownership, payment records, and the proper classification of dwarf dragons as diminished persons under galactic law. We request immediate return of the merchandise and compensation for lost profits. The lawyer displayed holographic documents, each one officially stamped and verified. The evidence looked overwhelming. Kevin felt his stomach tighten, but he remained calm. Magistrate Keller turned to Kevin. "Dr. Martinez, you may present your defense." Kevin stood, his voice steady despite his nervousness. "Your Honor, I'm not a lawyer. I'm a veterinarian. My job is to heal sick and injured creatures. 6 months ago, I found Ember dying in a dumpster. She had been starved, beaten, and her wings deliberately broken. I treated her because that's what doctors do. We help those who are suffering." He activated his own display, showing medical scans and photographs from the night he found Ember. Several beings in the courtroom gasped at the images of her injuries. "But this case isn't really about ownership or commerce regulations," Kevin continued. "It's about whether we recognize Ember as a person or as property. The prosecution keeps calling her a creature, merchandise, an it. But Ember is a she. She has a name, thoughts, feelings, and dreams. She's sentient, intelligent, and capable of complex reasoning." The Kreth lawyer interrupted. "Objection, Your Honor. The defendant's emotional appeal does not change legal classifications that have existed for 2 centuries. Sustained, Magistrate Keller said. "Dr. Martinez, do you have evidence to support your claim of full sentience?" "I do, Your Honor." "But I think the best evidence can speak for herself. I request permission for Ember to testify." The courtroom erupted in surprised chatter. Voss stood angrily. "This is ridiculous. You cannot allow property to testify." Magistrate Keller raised one hand for silence. "The court is interested in hearing from the subject of this dispute. The dwarf dragon may approach the witness stand." Ember flew from her perch to the witness platform, her small wings carrying her gracefully despite their old injuries. She landed carefully and looked directly at the magistrate. The translation device amplified her voice so everyone could hear. "My name is Ember," she began, her voice clear and strong. "I was hatched in a cave on the dragon world of Paralis. My clutch rejected me immediately, because of my size. They left me to die. Traders found me and sold me to Voss when I was barely old enough to understand language. For 3 years, I was kept in a cage, displayed as a curiosity, and beaten when I disobeyed." She paused, her golden eyes scanning the courtroom. Many beings watched her with fascination. Some looked uncomfortable. "I learned to make myself invisible, to speak only when commanded, to accept that I was worthless. That is what the galaxy taught me. Then Dr. Martinez found me. He didn't see merchandise or a defective creature. He saw someone who needed help. He gave me medicine, food, safety, and something I had never experienced before: dignity." The Kreth lawyer stood again. "Your Honor, this is a rehearsed speech designed to manipulate emotions." Magistrate Keller silenced him with a look. "Continue, Ember. I work at Dr. Martinez's clinic now. I help diagnose illnesses. I assist in treatments. I comfort frightened patients. I have studied medicine and can identify over 200 different ailments across multiple species. I read, I learn, I think, I feel. How can any law say I am diminished when I do all these things?" Ember turned to look directly at Voss. "You say you own me, but answer me this. Can you own something that dreams? Because I dream, Voss. I dream of a galaxy where dwarf dragons are free, where we are judged by our abilities, not our size, where children like I was are not thrown away as garbage." The courtroom was completely silent. Even the Kreth lawyers seemed unsure how to respond. Kevin stood again.
Your Honor, I have additional witnesses. Patients who Ember has treated.
Colleagues who have worked with her. Scientists who have studied her capabilities.
But I think the most important evidence is standing before you right now. Ember has demonstrated intelligence, self-awareness, moral reasoning, and complex communication.
These are the markers of sentience that the Galactic Council itself has established. Magistrate Kellor leaned forward. Dr. Martinez raises an important point. The classification of diminished persons was created 200 years ago, based on limited observation. This court must consider whether that classification remains valid in light of new evidence. She turned to the prosecution. Do you have any evidence that contradicts the intelligence and capabilities demonstrated by this individual? The Kreft lawyers whispered frantically among themselves. Finally, the lead lawyer spoke. Your Honor, our case rests on established legal precedent, not on individual capabilities. The courtroom buzzed with quiet conversation as Magistrate Kellor reviewed documents on her screen. Kevin noticed beings from dozens of species leaning forward in their seats, waiting for the decision. This case had become about more than just Ember. Everyone in the room seemed to understand that something important was happening. After nearly an hour of silence, Magistrate Kellor looked up. Her 4 eyes moved across the courtroom before settling on Ember. I have reviewed all evidence presented, including historical records of dwarf dragon classification. I have also consulted the Galactic Council's current standards for determining full sentience. She paused, and the room became so quiet that Kevin could hear his own heartbeat. The classification of dwarf dragons as diminished persons was established 217 years ago by a committee that never actually studied the species in detail. The classification was based primarily on physical size and limited flight capability. No cognitive testing was performed. No attempt was made to communicate with dwarf dragons or assess their intellectual abilities. Voss shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His lawyers looked worried for the first time. This court finds that the original classification was fundamentally flawed, Magistrate Kellor continued. The individual before us has demonstrated intelligence, self-awareness, complex reasoning, emotional depth, and specialized knowledge. These qualities meet or exceed the Galactic Council's own standards for full sentience. Kevin felt hope rising in his chest. Ember's wings spread slightly, an unconscious gesture of nervousness. Therefore, this court rules that dwarf dragons must be immediately reclassified as fully sentient beings with complete citizenship rights. The practice of buying, selling, or owning dwarf dragons is hereby declared illegal under sentient rights protection laws. Any dwarf dragon currently held as property must be freed immediately. The courtroom erupted. Some beings cheered, others shouted in protest. Kevin pulled Ember into a gentle hug, careful not to hurt her wings. The small dragon was shaking, but this time from joy rather than fear. Magistrate Kellor raised her hand for silence. Furthermore, Voss is charged with trafficking sentient beings, assault, and abuse. He will be taken into custody pending a full criminal investigation. Security officers moved toward Voss, who stood angrily. This is an outrage! You cannot change centuries of commerce law because of one human's emotional attachment to defective merchandise. This court can and has changed unjust law, Magistrate Kellor replied firmly. Sentient beings are not merchandise, regardless of their size. Officers, remove him. As Voss was led away, still shouting protests, beings throughout the courtroom approached Kevin and Ember. A Vorian female touched Ember's wing gently. Thank you for being brave. Shadowy Pepovich. My species was once considered lesser, too. It took courage to change minds. Over the next few days, the ruling's impact spread like fire across the galaxy. Communication channels filled with debates and discussions. Some species celebrated the decision as progress. Others worried about the economic disruption it would cause. But the law was clear, and it could not be ignored. Kevin's clinic became even busier than before. Dwarf dragons began arriving on Haven Ridge, seeking medical care and refuge. Many had been freed from slavery, but had nowhere to go. Kevin and Ember worked 18-hour days treating patients and helping the newly freed dragons adjust to their freedom. 3 months after the trial, a delegation from the Galactic Council arrived at Haven Ridge. They wanted to meet with Kevin and Ember personally. The delegation leader was an elderly Quellan named Administrator Chen. She had kind eyes and moved slowly due to her advanced age. Kevin and Ember met her in the colony's main conference room.
Dr. Martinez, Ember, the Galactic Council has been monitoring the situation following Magistrate Keller's ruling. We have freed over 4,000 dwarf dragons from various forms of captivity.
Many more are coming forward to claim their rights. Ember spoke carefully.
Administrator Chen, how are they managing?
Most dwarf dragons have never experienced freedom. They don't know how to live independently. The administrator smiled. That is exactly why we are here. The council wants to establish a foundation dedicated to helping recently freed species adjust to their new status. We want you both to lead this organization.
Kevin blinked in surprise.
Lead it? But I'm just a veterinarian.
You are the human who saw value where others saw none, Administrator Chen replied. You fought for justice when it was difficult and unpopular.
You have already helped dozens of dwarf dragons begin new lives. The council believes you are the right choice. Ember looked at Kevin, her golden eyes questioning. Kevin thought about his small clinic, about the work he loved, but he also thought about the thousands of dwarf dragons who needed help, and about the other species still classified unfairly.
We'll do it,
Kevin said.
But we're not abandoning the clinic. We'll run both.
Ember and I work well together. Administrator Chen nodded approvingly. The council will provide resources and support. You will have authority to investigate other questionable classifications and advocate for species rights across the galaxy. Over the following year, the Interspecies Rights Foundation grew rapidly. Kevin and Ember hired staff from dozens of species, many of whom had experienced discrimination themselves. They opened centers on multiple worlds where freed beings could receive medical care, education, and job training. The clinic on Haven Ridge remained their home base. Lisa took on more responsibility, managing daily operations while Kevin and Ember traveled to help establish new programs. Each time they returned home, the clinic felt like a sanctuary. One evening after a long day of work, Kevin and Ember sat on the clinic's roof watching the sunset. The sky turned brilliant shades of orange and purple as Haven Ridge's sun dipped below the horizon. "Kevin, do you ever regret finding me that night?" Ember asked quietly. Kevin laughed softly. "Regret?" "Ember, you're the best partner I could have asked for. Together, we've changed lives."
We've changed laws. We've proven that compassion and justice can win against prejudice and greed.
Ember's scales caught the fading light, making her shine like polished bronze. I was dying in a dumpster, believing I was worthless. Now I help run an organization that protects the rights of thousands.
How did this happen? It happened because one person decided to care, Kevin replied. And because one small dragon was brave enough to speak her truth. You showed the galaxy that size doesn't determine worth.
That's powerful, Ember. The small dragon moved closer to Kevin, her wing touching his arm in a gesture of affection. Thank you for seeing me when others looked away. Thank you for trusting me, Kevin answered. And for teaching me that the smallest beings can have the biggest impact. As stars began appearing in the darkening sky, Kevin and Ember sat together in comfortable silence. Around them, the galaxy was slowly changing, becoming more just and more compassionate. It wasn't perfect yet, and there was still much work to do. but they had proven something important. Every life had value. Every voice deserved to be heard. And sometimes, all it took to change the world was one person willing to step in when others walked away.